So, good morning, everyone. I wanted to I'm Heather Fowler with Alabama Health Guidance, by the way, and I wanted to follow up. I know it's a couple of days after Valentine's Day, but if you watched our YouTube video that Alicia and I did a couple of weeks ago, we did some ACA scenarios that we thought you'd love. And so I just wanted to follow up on that and do a few more because when I was teaching first grade, I found that it was so much better to ask kids to apply the knowledge that they had instead of just asking, rote memory type of questions. It just takes a higher level of thinking if you have to apply that to situations. And so I thought that might be the best way for us to learn is just to take some scenarios and you have to pull in all the things that you know and apply it. So that's what I wanted us to do today. But before I got started with that, I put this on here so I wouldn't forget. There is a little housekeeping note that we have found out. So last month in the webinar, I reminded everyone to look in your commission portal and see who had an AR balance, and then to go to Health Sherpa and see if it was showing paid. Well, that information in Health Sherpa is not correct. So I don't know where the breakdown has happened. I've been talking to Brent about that a little bit, but there are a lot of people in Health Sherpa showing paid that have not really paid. So I would suggest go back to your commission portal, download that spreadsheet, look at those that have the AR balance, and you may want to reach out to them. I had 31 people. Well, when I looked in Health Sherpa, I thought, well, 30 of these have paid, so I'm in good shape. But then after we discovered this breakdown of information, I started calling those people. And actually, like 24 of them had really not paid, but they were showing that they were paid in Health Sherpa. So, you may just want to look at that. A few of them I knew, hey, I know they would mean to pay. They wanted this insurance. And so a couple of them, their auto pay had gotten turned off. Another one, something was wrong with the way she'd put in her credit card information. I don't really know the details of what all had happened with all of them. But, then I also had a few that said, well, I'm just not going to be able to pay this, or I've decided I'm not going to keep it or whatever. But you may just want to look back at, and I put the link here to the commission portal, see who's still got an AR balance, and just don't rely on that Health Sherpa. If it's showing paid, that may not be correct. So I just wanted to let everybody know that before we got started. Okay, and so this was the YouTube video that Alicia and I did. We had so much fun doing it. And here's a link to it as well if you've not gotten to watch it. It was a lot of fun. We did some scenarios with all kids. And then Alicia went into like helping people choose the plan that would be best for them. We talked about plan choice, and that was so informative. I really have used what I learned from that a lot. And then just some more other things that I hope you would find useful. So if you've not had a chance to watch that, go and watch it. It was a lot of fun. So let's just do some scenarios today. And this is going to be really awkward for me because I want to, as soon as I ask a question or say something, the teacher in me wants to like answer the question right away. But I'm going to do my best to give some wait time because I would love for somebody to speak up. I know that's super scary, but unmute yourself and let's do like, if you have an idea about what to say, I would love to hear from some of you. But I am going to do some wait time so that I'm not just talking all the time, that I'm giving you time to think. And even if you're watching it recorded, it may be weird to have a little downtime. It kind of makes me nervous to just sit here in silence, but I want to give you time to think. So here's our first scenario. It's Johnny and June. And so Johnny is 30 and June is 28, and they are enrolled in a marketplace plan. They did that during open enrollment, and their plan went into effect January 1. All right. So they're all set. In March, Johnny calls you and he says that June has gotten a job, that she, is now going to have coverage through her employer. And so he wants to take her off of the marketplace plan. Okay. So they enrolled, husband and wife both enrolled during OEP. Their plan's in effect right now. He calls you in March. June's got a job. She's got employer coverage. She wants to come off the plan. What should you do? What are some questions you might need to ask? Does this make anybody think of anything? And I would love for somebody to talk back to me.
I think I would. This is Megan, and
Hey,
this is
Megan, thank you.
hey, this is my first time ever on a call and first time talking. So I'm just, if I say something
Oh,
wrong, just correct me. So the first thing I would ask, just right off, is who's the main person on the application? Is it June or Johnny? Because I would go in and report a life change to remove the person who is now has the employer sponsored plan.
very good. So you will, that is exactly right. You'll need to go into the application. And if, you know, which, I don't know who would be the primary applicant, but either way, if June was the primary applicant, there below her name, you could check that she was no longer applying for coverage, and that's going to take her off on that day. Or if Johnny was the primary applicant, you can just click over a few pages to where you added June in. You'll still leave her on the application because she is part of the household, but you would just check that she's not applying. So she's no longer needing coverage. Good. Thank you, Megan. Does
Thank you all.
any, yeah. Can anybody else think of anything you might need to ask about while you have him on the call, or anything else you might need to update in the application?
Would you change the income, the household income?
Yes, I'm so glad you thought that was kind of what I was hinting at. Yes. So now that she's working, you're going to need to say, well, that's going to change your income. So we need to update her income. Very good. I like that. Yes. And another thing that that I want to go ahead and say is that that employer may offer coverage to Johnny now. And if so, if it is affordable, then he's no longer going to be eligible for the tax credit on the marketplace. So there are several things there that you would need to, just as you go back through that application, make sure you update the income and then update about if Johnny is now offered coverage or not. So that's great. Thank you, Megan, for speaking up. If I had a little treat, I would give it to you. That's how I would do in first grade. It helped people answer out. I would say, "Oh, here's you a little treat," and then everybody would want to answer a little heart eraser or something. Thank you. Did anybody else think of anything else? Those were the things I had in mind. But does anybody have a question about this scenario or anything they want to add? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Megan. You did great. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so this is Benjamin. All right, Benjamin changed jobs last week and he is not going to have employer coverage at his new job. So, like, he called you today and he said, "Hey, last week I've changed jobs and I'm no longer going to have coverage when I take this new job." And in the course of the conversation, you find out that his primary care doctor is Mike Orender. And he tells you how much he enjoys going to this doctor. That's been his doctor for a long time, and he does not want to change doctors. But or you look up using the provider lookup tool that Dr. Orender is not a select primary care physician. Okay. And then in addition to that, Benjamin's income is estimated to be $60,000 for 2026. But he says, that's what I think it's going to be, but I'm going to have the opportunity to work, some overtime or work some extra hours and make extra money. Now he's a household of one. So he's going to estimate his income to be $60,000. but he thinks he might make more. So we've got two issues here to really talk about. Well, I guess three. He's losing his coverage. So does he have an SEP? He wants to keep this Mike Orrender as his doctor, but he's not a select PCP. And his income is estimated to be at 60,000, but maybe more. So, what are some things that you notice in that scenario that you might need to talk to him about, or just kind of what does that get your wheels turning, and what's anybody thinking about that? What are some things that you need to think about?
It's Megan again. I'm going to give other people a chance to talk first, and then
I
I'll talk.
love that you're speaking up. That's great. I'll send you a gift card or something.
No, you're fine. You're
You
fine.
know.
The what I would say, and again, don't know if it's right or wrong, but if he's going to be at 60,000 for sure, and pretty much said he will probably go above that, he's not getting a tax subsidy, a credit, so that would be discussed because that's obviously one of the perks of the marketplace.
He's going to be very, very close
Very
to that
close.
cliff. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
If he works some extra hours. So that's definitely something you need to talk to him about. That, he's going, if you put it in at 60, he's going to have a subsidy. But if he makes a little bit more, and I always keep that chart with me so that I'll
Right.
know that cliff. Yeah, he's going to need to be aware that he may go over that cliff. And if he does, then he would owe all of that subsidy back. So,
That's right. That's right.
yeah,
And then
very good thinking.
secondly, I didn't catch the very, very beginning. It cut out of his situation, but it sounds to me like the doctor he doesn't want to lose or doesn't want to not be able to go to, and that doctor is not covered or not coming up in the provider search as a PCP for the plan. That now, is he already on that plan or is he picking it new?
No, he's losing his employer coverage, so
Okay.
he's going to be brand new to marketplace.
Yeah, well, he
Yes.
probably wants to consider a plan that does have his physician in it. I would even go as far, I don't know if you're supposed to say this, but to contact his physician, and maybe directly find out for sure from him before choosing a plan.
Yes, yes, that's great. Yes. A lot of times I do end up having to call the clinic, especially if they're seeing a nurse practitioner. I'll have to call the clinic and see who the supervising doctor is, because we know we can't designate a nurse practitioner as that PCP. But that's
Right.
exactly right, Megan. So, if you see that their doctor is not in the select network, then that is going to really narrow down the choices of the Blue Cross plans. They're either going to have to go with the value silver or value gold, or then in the bronze category, it could be the HSA or the saver bronze. So they're really going to, if they want to use that PCP, they're going to be narrowed down to those four options. And so, and on the value silver and value gold, there is an increased copay, even to see that primary care doctor that is not still in the select network. So, just great. That is exactly what I was wanting everybody to kind of think about with that scenario. Wonderful. Thank you, Megan. And
No
what is your
problem.
last name again, Megan? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Talbert, Talbert.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you're on here today. Thank you so
Yes.
much for
That's all.
answering. Okay. And so now we're going to talk about Donnie and Joan. All right. So Donnie is 65 and Joan is 62. They're married and they plan to file taxes jointly. Donnie has just started his Medicare. And so Joan is losing coverage. Maybe they were both on his employer plan. And when he turned 65, he's stopping work and he's going on Medicare. So Joan is that spouse in the house, as we like to call it. So she's going to need Marketplace. All right. Donnie will draw about 64,000 in retirement. And Joan is self-employed as a sitter, and she estimates she's going to make 20,000. So, is Joan eligible to enroll? And is there anything important that we should notice about this situation and talk to them about? Okay.
Heather, would you read the first, if nobody else has a comment, would you read the first two sentences again of it?
Yeah. So Donnie has just turned 65. So he's going to leave his employer coverage.
Okay.
Maybe he's just going to quit his job. He's turned 65. He's going to be on Medicare. And so Joan is his wife. It will lose her coverage. And so you
Yep.
have Donnie on Medicare and Joan now that needs to go on Marketplace.
Okay.
And then Donnie thinks his income's going to be about 64 and Joan thinks her income's going to be about 20. So is there something that anybody notices about that?
They're close to the threshold as
Yes.
well. Yeah, like the person earlier, they're really on the line. I think it's
Mm,
84 and some
so
change.
yeah, yeah, very good. Yep, that's what I was just wanting, everybody to keep in mind how important it is. I keep that income chart with me all the time when I talk to somebody. And I just know, hey, if they're close, I need to really talk to them about that income cliff because if they go over that, that will be thousands of dollars that they will have to repay
Right.
when they reconcile.
And most likely a surprise scenario. What I like to tell people is, even if your income increases or it's, not giving you much of a tax credit or a subsidy, just know and you're going to have to pay more in that premium than maybe you like or you used to pay before your income was higher. Just know you either pay it on the front end or you pay it on the back end at a tax where, reconciliation type situation. So it's, they're going to get it at tax time or you're going to pay it in your correct monthly premium based on your income.
Yes, that is perfect. Yes, that's exactly right. So that's what I was hoping to kind of get at with this scenario is that would just, kind of send up a red flag to you when you hear these numbers. Hey, that's getting close to that cliff. And then, there are, if they decide to go with the bronze plan, of course, they could do an HSA and maybe contribute to that. So, you could go into some of those things and talk about that, but just those numbers, when you hear those, that needs to get your attention that, hey, they're close to that cliff and I really need to talk to them about that. You don't want somebody getting that surprise. All right, great. Thank you again, Megan. All right, so our next person is Kennedy. Kennedy has just turned 20, and so she has lost her Medicaid. Actually, I think it's 19 when you lose your Medicaid. I should have put 19 on there. But anyway, so she has just lost her Medicaid and it's still within her 60 days. She lives with her grandparents, but she's a full-time student and she doesn't plan to work. She's not going to have any income in 2026. But like I said, she lives with her grandparents. She's a full time student and they pay all of her expenses and claim her as a dependent on their taxes. Okay. So we've got Kennedy. She's within her 60-day period of losing Medicaid. She lives with her grandparents. She's not going to have any income, but they claim her as a dependent. Both grandparents are on Medicare already and they draw retirement benefits and Social Security. The grandparents' estimated income for 2026 would be $70,000. So, what are Kennedy's options? Does anybody want to speak up about things you notice in this scenario or things that you think about this or what would you do? Okay. So I'll just kind of throw some things out. Since she's still within her 60-day period of losing her Medicaid coverage, that would open up a special enrollment period. So she would be able to enroll. The fact that she doesn't have any income does not keep her from being able to enroll and get a tax credit because she's going to be claimed as a dependent on her grandparents' taxes. So she can claim the tax credit, based off of their income. And with their income being $70,000, they're within that range of 100 to 400%. So they will be able to get a premium tax credit. Now, one thing that I would want everybody to take note of is that when you fill out that application, you're going to have to put the whole household, both grandparents and Kennedy, on that application. And even though the grandparents are on Medicare and they would not be applying for coverage, you still have to put them on there because you're using their income. And I know Kennedy is the one applying for coverage, but if you put her as that primary applicant, it is just going to mess up that whole Health Sherpa application. So what you would need to do is put one of the grandparents as the primary applicant, but just mark that they're not applying for coverage. And then when you get to the other question, you're still going to have to put the other grandparent on the application, just not applying for coverage, and then put Kennedy on there as applying for coverage. So I know that kind of seems strange that you're going to put the grandparents on there as the primary, or one of the grandparents as the primary applicant, but that's just the way you have to do it in order for the application to go through smoothly. Okay. It's just going to get all messed up if you try to put Kennedy as that primary applicant. So I run into that situation with agents a lot, and so I just wanted to reiterate that. Does anybody have a comment about that? Okay. Well, let's move on to our next scenario. All right. So the next scenario, we have a family of three. We have Patrick, that's age 30. We have Susie, that's 28. And then they have a baby named Jake, that's only 3 months old. So Patrick and Susie are married, and they are going to file jointly. And Patrick works at a car dealership, and he earns $60,000 for the year, and he gets paid monthly. His employer offers health insurance. His employee only contribution, if only he's on the insurance, it's about $100 a month, or exactly $100 a month. He's got me these figures. But if he adds Susie and Jake, then his premium is going to go up to $800 for the month. And so Patrick calls you right now, late February, and he wonders if you could help Susie and Jake get cheaper coverage. And so would you be able right now, outside of open enrollment, to help Susie and Jake? Does anybody have any ideas about that or any thoughts? What would you say?
I know I'm the absolute worst, but I have a hearing disability, so it takes me a minute on processing what you say. Will you give me one more first two sentences of it again?
Yeah, okay. So basically we have Patrick and Susie and their baby Jake. Okay,
Okay.
it's a family of three. They are going to file jointly, and Susie doesn't work. Patrick works at a car dealership. He estimates his income's going to be 60,000. And
Okay.
so his employer offers coverage to the whole family. If it's only Jake on it, it's $100 a month. But if he adds Susie and Jake, then the premium goes up to $800 a month. So he's just, calling you because he says, we can't afford, this $800 a month. He's missed open enrollment, but could you help Susie and Jake right now outside of open enrollment?
The first couple things I think, and again, could be right or wrong, is first of all, we're outside open enrollment, so there's no just, open reign for everybody. It would require a special enrollment period. And to get a special enrollment period, you have to have a qualifying life event. So he would have had to lose the coverage, or they would have had to come off of the coverage, whether, regardless of what that side situation is, to prompt, unless they had a new baby or were newly married to prompt that special enrollment period. So that's my thought there. And then my secondary thought was, I think you mentioned she was no income or going to have no income. So even if she applied through the marketplace, to my knowledge, no income would push her to Medicaid.
Okay, so Susie and Jake are married. So
Okay.
they're going to file jointly, and then they have the
Okay.
baby Jake. So they're going to file as a household of three. So
Okay.
so you're on the right track. Very good thinking, Megan. So if she was just a single woman, the no income would, push her off of the
Okay. Okay.
marketplace.
So it's going to put everybody in there no matter what. Okay. I got it.
That's right. So it's still going to be a household of three, and their whole household income would be $60,000. So they're okay in that respect. Their
Okay.
income's okay for a household of three, and they would get a tax credit. So you're exactly right with what you were saying about they have to have a special enrollment period. And this is one that sometimes people don't think about. And I know it took me a while to remember it. But if a family has unaffordable employer coverage, either for the whole family or for just the spouse and the kids, then that unaffordable coverage can open up a special enrollment period. It still technically falls under losing coverage, but they are going to drop their coverage because of it being unaffordable. And so then that opens up a special enrollment period outside of open enrollment. And so the way you could go about figuring this out is in our ACA handbook, it's called a family glitch calculator. And it's in the section where I talk about household size, I believe. And so, or you can just Google it. The one that I like is the HAFA, HAFA family glitch calculator. And it will ask you questions like, what is the total household income? What would the lowest cost employee only plan be? And then what's the lowest cost family plan? And it asks how often they take that out. But you just answer those questions. And then when you hit calculate, it's going to show you if Patrick, who is the employee, is eligible for marketplace, and then if the family is eligible for marketplace. And so it's roughly about 10%. I think it's really like 9.96 or something like that. But just rough math, the calculator will do it exact to the digit. But just right now, us thinking through this scenario, if we just say roughly 10%, and he's going to make 60,000, then we can see that $100 a month would be affordable. So his employee only coverage would be affordable. So he's going to have to keep that employee coverage. But Susie and Jake, when he puts them on it and it goes up to $800 a month, then that's over 10% of his monthly income. So their coverage is unaffordable now. And so what you can do is go ahead, have them plan to drop that employer coverage, say at the end of the month or whatever. You'll have to get a letter that their coverage is ending. And then you can do an application for Susie and Jake. And now you'll still include Patrick on there, just as not applying, because there'll be a household of three. And probably Jake, it's going to say that he's going to all kids. And so go ahead and put him on there as applying for coverage. But Marketplace will send his information on over to Medicaid. And then they will get a letter saying if he is eligible for all kids or not. So that's what would happen there. Thank you again, Megan. All right, so
Yeah, Heather, let me ask a quick side question to it. I think when I first was listening, I understood it that the spouse Patrick was already enrolled and wanting to add Susie and Jake. So what would the
Oh,
scenario be if Patrick was already enrolled at the car dealership? They've been married, past the 60-day window, and they're married a year, let's say, and he calls with that same scenario. What would the answer be to what Susie and Jake's options were if Patrick was like, "Hey, it's my open enrollment. I'm just wanting to add Susie and Jake, but it's going to be $800. Can you help me?"
okay. So that is where I'm glad you brought that up because that special enrollment period that I was talking about with the unaffordable coverage, it technically falls under losing coverage. So if
Okay.
Susie and Jake are not enrolled in that employer coverage, then they can't really lose it to open
Get
up
a
that
special
special. And
enrollment. Yep,
that's right.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, if it was time that he could add them right then for maybe just like 1 month,
Right,
you
and
know,
then take it away, right.
that's right, but that does require them to have that prior coverage in order to
Yep.
lose it. Good question, Megan. I'm glad you
Yeah,
brought
no
that
problem.
up. Good thinking. All
Mhm.
right. So I see that we're already at 10 o'clock. Oh, goodness. All right. So I'm just going to have to jump through these real quick. I'll skip Tanya. You can read that one on your own. I'll send out these slides and we can, if you have any questions or anything, you can follow up with me. We can do a little chat or online or through a phone call or something. And I've got to skip Betsy too. Okay. So this was one thing I would kind of wanted to get to this. Okay, this is one I have not used this. I'm just going to tell you what it is. So, Betsy, a household of one, had called you during open enrollment, but at the time she said, "Well, I'm only going to have $10,000 of income for 2026." So, you explained to her that's not enough income. She's not going to be able to get a tax credit. And she says, "Well, I can't afford full price. I'm just not going to be able to enroll." All right. Well, then she calls you today, at the end of February, and she says, "Hey, I've gotten this job and now I'm going to make 17,000 this year." So now she's moved out of that gap. Could she enroll? And so I'm just going to tell you what I would have said no, because our low income SEP's gone. There's not going to be a special enrollment period for you. But an agent had called me the other day with a scenario similar to this. And I was just looking through that SEP chart because I thought I want to, just make sure I hadn't missed anything. And I saw this on the special enrollment period chart, moving out of the Medicaid coverage gap. And so I read that very carefully and I thought, well, that seems like that would apply, but I have never used this SEP before. I noticed it says CMS caseworker and I thought, well, I'm not really sure how I would even go about using this. So I thought I'm just going to email CMS and see what they say. So here was the email that I got back. And so, from CMS, they said that yes, that this regulation is still in effect, that a consumer can access the newly eligible for APTC SEP, and then it's got the code out there, from the law, due to no longer being in the Medicaid coverage gap. And it says by calling the Marketplace call center and explaining the situation, that SEP can be awarded through a caseworker. Now, I have not personally ended up using that SEP, but I thought that might be one that we all needed to make sure we were aware of. And if anybody has used it, I would love to hear some feedback from it. Or does anybody just have a comment about that SEP? Has anybody used it or have any thoughts about it?
Heather, I got something to say.
Alicia, I was hoping you'd speak up because I had emailed you about this with that. And I'm just wondering, I have not found anybody that's used it. What are your thoughts about it?
I used it this week because you're so awesome and told me about it. Okay.
Oh,
So this lady has not had insurance in well over a year. Bad life thing. And she got referred to me by a prosthetics company. She needs a whole new leg, right? And she
uh-huh.
literally has no insurance. She has no income. She is literally living in a cabin in the woods and people are bringing her food. It's a bad situation. And because you told me about this, I asked her, have you recently applied for disability? And she said yes, and we're in the process of that, and I'm hoping that it will get approved this year. Well, praise God. Now we can estimate some income, honey, and that's going to be at least $15,650. We don't know for sure what that's going to be, but we're going to estimate it's probably at least that much. And when you find out exactly, you're going to call me and let me know. That opens you up for this specific SEP. You just went from having no income and expecting no income, but now you expect to reasonably be on disability by the end of this year. Praise God. March 1st
Yeah.
effective date, 0 deductible, $30 insurance. She's going to get a leg. Okay, Lieutenant
Oh,
Dan,
wow.
everybody's excited.
That is awesome. So how did it go when you called? So you had to call into the marketplace. This is the part I was curious about how it would go when you
I
call in.
haven't
Oh,
called
you
into
haven't?
Marketplace. It let
Okay.
me submit. Every once in a while, they're less than 10%. They don't ask you to verify anything.
Yeah.
And so they haven't asked me to verify that. I was able to
Okay.
just do the app like regular, but I'm waiting for that moment where I do have to prove it. And
Uh-huh.
I plan to write up a big old fancy letter and have them sign it and date it and see if that goes through.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Yeah, I was wondering. I thought I had a situation like that I was going to help this other agent with, but theirs turned out to be something different. So I was thinking, because sometimes when you call into the marketplace, you never know how that's going to go, who you're going to get. And so I thought, well, I don't know how that'll work. But okay, well, good. I'm glad you were able to use it. That's
When I
awesome.
find out, I'll let you know what kind of verification they asked for, but I was
Yeah.
going to specifically quote the exact rule. I saved your email that's like rule 105D724 blah blah blah. I'm willing to whip it out and send it to whoever I got to send it to.
I love it. And I noticed on this email, that was why I put it on this slide. It's even down here at the bottom. It's got like a reference number too to like this email, this REF
Mhm.
MSG. So I thought, well, if I had to use this, I was going to call into the marketplace and whoever I talked to, I was going to say, well, I have this email and, here's exactly what it says because, well, good. I'm glad you were able to use it. I'm glad the lady's going to be able to get a leg. That is just fabulous. So, all right, great. Well, I'm sorry we've run over by a few minutes. We just had a lot to talk about today. Thank you, Megan, for speaking up, and thank you, Alicia. And if anybody else has something that they wanted to ask or wanted to say and they didn't get a chance to, or if you're watching it in a recording and you want to come in or text me or call me, I'll be glad to talk about any of these with you later. So thanks so much, and I hope y'all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.